Our guy here is on the run and stumbles upon a monastery, thinking he'll just heal up and lay low. But surprise! The nuns here are all drop-dead gorgeous, with killer figures, and he becomes their prey. He starts to question if he should leave or not. Today, we're diving into a comedy flick called Virgin Territory. The movie kicks off with a plague sweeping through, taking lives and causing chaos. Our young swordsman, Lorenzo, is head over heels for the town master's daughter, Pampinea, and he brings her flowers every day. She just watches silently, as her dad's planning to marry her off to a Russian noble. But then, her parents die in the plague, and she's left alone, struggling to keep her castle. The second richest guy in town, Giovanni, claims that Pampinea's dad owed him a huge debt and now everything, including the castle and Pampinea herself, belongs to him. He's been eyeing her for a while, and his plan is to get rid of any competition, starting with Lorenzo. Lorenzo, despite his fancy sword skills, is outnumbered and has to escape. On his way, he meets a corpse carrier who tells him about a monastery that needs a gardener. Lorenzo thinks, hey, that's a good idea. I can get some food and hide from Giovanni's men. But there's a catch. The gardener has to be deaf and mute. Just as he's being chased, he climbs a tree to hide but accidentally falls and passes out. When he wakes up, he's surrounded by nuns who think he's an angel sent from heaven. His handsome face has these young nuns all aflutter. As the nuns undress him to check for injuries, Lorenzo, already awake, just enjoys the moment. But then, the Mother Superior walks in and a now awake Lorenzo puts on a perfect performance, pretending to be deaf and mute. The Mother Superior, convinced he's a miracle sent by God, arranges for him to have a comfortable bath, attended by 2 young nuns. Meanwhile, Pampinea refuses to submit to Giovanni and goes to church to discuss a plan with her best friend. They decide to hide in an old house in the suburbs and wait for the Russian noble to come and marry her. Giovanni threatens them not to run away, but a priest, who used to be a thief and now works as a painter in the church, scolds Giovanni and they leave the church. Pampinea asks her friend to take the priest to the old house in the suburbs, while she hides in the monastery. She recognizes Lorenzo as the gardener, but the nuns tell her he's a deaf-mute messenger from God. She knows he's Lorenzo, the man who's been pursuing her. She's curious about his purpose and follows him. She sees him holding a nun's hand and entering the deep forest, and when they look refreshed and radiant. The next day, 2 nuns come to Lorenzo's room, saying they also want his blessing, and then they undress. This news quickly spreads throughout the monastery, and even the Mother Superior invites him to her room. Pampinea, who sees all this, feels an inexplicable anger. She wears a veil, enters Lorenzo's room, doesn't take off her veil, but covers Lorenzo's eyes, and then whispers a full of love confession in his ear. After a soft kiss, she quickly leaves. But it's this kiss that deeply touches his heart. The focus shifts to the friends and their boyfriends on the road. They meet 2 farm girls who invite the boys to taste fresh milk. After the boys lie under the cow, the girls rush in and curse them. The boys, embarrassed, leave the farm, but unfortunately, the cow no longer produces milk. To ease the relationship with their boyfriends, the girls go to the woods, but suddenly a group of thieves appears and captures them. The thief leader says he's going to give them a job, and when the girls ask what the job is, he says it's easy and most of the time they just need to lie down. The girls don't quite understand what he means, but in this situation, they first need to save their lives. The girls perform a beautiful dance for the thief leader, but strangely, the leader completely ignores their performance. The girls get angry, and if the leader isn't interested, they'll try another way. The group of thieves below the stage is quickly fascinated by the beauty of the 2 girls, and the atmosphere on the scene is very hot. The girls suggest a game of comparing sizes, but unexpectedly, this game causes a riot among the thieves. Taking advantage of the chaos, the girls steal the key, rescue their boyfriends, and prepare to escape. Back at the monastery, it's heard that the Russian noble has arrived in town and is coming to the monastery to find Pampinea. Hearing this news, she's a bit torn. If she leaves now, she'll never see her lover Lorenzo again. She comes up with a crazy idea, telling the Mother Superior that she heard Lorenzo singing. This news is like a bolt from the blue, and the Mother Superior prepares to test it herself. She speaks loudly in Lorenzo's ear, but he wakes up with a start. In a hurry, Lorenzo says, "Thank God I can speak again, what a miracle!" As you can imagine, He's kicked out of the monastery. Seeing this, Pampinea, who is about to leave, is overjoyed and teases Lorenzo. At this point, he doesn't know that she's the girl who left him a passionate kiss. Seeing her leaving to return to the city, Lorenzo thinks he'll hitch a ride back to the city. At this time, the priest arrives at the monastery, and his life is about to start a new chapter. God's will leads him to heaven, and just as they need a gardener, the Mother Superior immediately arranges for him to take a bath. At this point, the Russian nobleman arrives in town, and when he sees Gerbino, he's convinced that he must be his future father-in-law, that is, Pampinea's father. The meeting ends up being very unpleasant. He receives news that Pampinea is at a monastery on the outskirts of town, but on his way there, he is ambushed. It turns out that Gerbino has sent people to eliminate them all. The Russian nobleman barely escapes, and when he reaches the river, he sees a beautiful woman bathing. The woman says she's a noblewoman from the city and is also going to a wedding. He suddenly realizes, "Oh my God, this must be my fiancée Pampinea." The woman then says, "I'm not a fairy, you just sense my call." The Russian nobleman's heart is completely conquered. They agree to hold the wedding after they return to the city. On the other hand, Pampinea returns to her castle, and Lorenzo wants to leave, but the girl invites him to stay for dinner. That night, Pampinea, dressed in a formal gown, looks noble and enchanting, and while they chat, Lorenzo talks about his experience in the monastery, where he was blindfolded and kissed by a nun. Pampinea doesn't understand why he would fall in love with a girl he's never met just because of a kiss. Lorenzo says it's precisely that kiss that made him fall in love with her irrevocably. The girl is very happy inside, but she pretends to be indifferent and asks, "What if you find that girl and she doesn't like you? Should you kiss me to test the feeling?" Lorenzo is a bit hesitant, saying, "You are a noblewoman, so beautiful and noble, I feel unreachable." The girl asks him to close his eyes and try that feeling again. Just then, Gerbino shows up. He wants to get rid of all the men around Pampinea. Seeing Lorenzo in danger, the girl can only agree to marry to save Lorenzo's life. The boy thinks she shouldn't do this, to marry an old geezer for him. At this time, the priest who received the news comes and says he will help them hold the wedding, and Gerbino, as agreed, lets Lorenzo go. Pampinea tells the priest that Lorenzo is her true love. The priest asks if he also loves you? The girl says he loves me, but he doesn't know it yet. The priest finds this hard to understand. Pampinea takes out a bag of gems. The priest immediately understands the girl's words. Lorenzo has already anticipated Gerbino's arrangement. He solves the trouble around him, sees the Russian nobleman. The two decide to return to the castle to save people together. At this time in the castle, the wedding has started. According to the secret agreement with the girl, the priest tries to delay as much as possible. Gerbino is quite annoyed, but there is no way, everything has to be done. When the Russian nobleman arrives, the wedding ceremony has already been completed. He doesn't recognize Pampinea, but shouts to avenge his followers. He and Lorenzo join forces, and in a few rounds, they eliminate Gerbino. At this time, the Russian nobleman kneels on one knee and formally proposes to Pampinea. The girl refuses his request. He can't understand at all, saying, "We were clapping together in the river before. Have you forgotten?" The girl lifts her wedding veil and says, "We've never met." At this time, the Russian nobleman sees the girl's best friend behind Pampinea. It turns out that she is his true love. At this time, Pampinea finds that Lorenzo is gone. It turns out that he said he was going to find his unseen true love. Pampinea has no choice but to tell the truth. The girl asks the boy to close his eyes and says the same words she said in the monastery. The boy finally understands. Pampinea is the girl who has been haunting his dreams. Alright, the movie ends here. All the people in love have found their happiness, and I hope everyone can also find their own happiness. That concludes today's episode. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to your continued support. See you next